Today we have a bunch of presentations we're looking forward to hearing. So I'll start with the call to order and introductions. My name is Mead Meyer-Welburn. I am a planning manager with Pima Association of Governments in the Integrated Planning Department. Just a quick note, to run the meeting, we have to maintain quorum throughout. So that's out of our members, we have to maintain at least 5. So if you do have to go at any point, please let us know and contact your alternate if you can at all possible, whether you have to just pop out for a little bit or exit the Zoom for any reason. So I will go through and do introductions. First, I'll start with our very important hosts. We have technology staff that help to make this all run smoothly. So I wanted to send a thank you to Jeff, Brad, Crystal, Bree, Jesse, and Isa, who are here online with us. And then I'm just going to go in order that I see it in my list and call on you, and you can please announce which entity you work for and if you are a member of the Watershed Planning Subcommittee or other group. So mine is not in alphabetical order, but I see Scott Bennett first.
Yes, I'm Scott Bennett. I'm with Town of Oro Valley Stormwater, and I don't believe I am part of the Watershed Planning Subcommittee. The only group I've been affiliated with is the Stormwater Management Working Group. I am here because John Spiker is no longer with the town.
Peter Abraham let me count you as his replacement until at least as long as you would like to be. We could replace you thereafter.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
And next, Aaron Tews. Please introduce yourself.
Sorry, I had to find the mute button. My name is Aaron Tews. I am the community liaison for Southeast Arizona, and I cover Pima County as well as Santa Cruz, Cochise, Graham, and Greenlee.
Thank you, Aaron. Next, we have Angel Brialt.
Hi everyone, my name is Angel Antonio Bro. I'm with Tucson Clean and Beautiful. I am the director of their Watershed Stewardship Programming and Land Stewardship Programming, as well as a member of Tucson Birthplace Open Space Coalition, supporting Chuck today presentation.
Thank you, Angel. Asia, you're next.
Hi everybody, Asia Philbin with Tucson Water. And I believe I'm here. Chad Lepore is typically the member that I'm representing today.
Thank you. And next we have both Catlo and Maria on the same video.
Thanks, Mead. Catlo Shipek with Watershed Management Group and also a co-lead with Mead for the Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative. And
hi everyone, my name is Maria Johnson and I am the coordinator and planning lead with the Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative.
And this is Maria's first day and her laptop is still getting set up, so she's joining with us.
Thanks for jumping in. All right, you'll hear a presentation by Catlo later. Next, Charles Stack.
Turn audio on helps. Thanks, Mead. Chuck Stack. I'm the citizen representative for the town of Oro Valley to EPAC PAG. So it's great to be here. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you. And we have another Chuck Graff.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, it's Chuck Graff. I'm a retired hydrogeologist from ADQ since 2018. Since then, I've been quite involved with Mission Garden as a board member and docent, and that's Tucson's, Friends of Tucson's birthplace. And Friends of Tucson's birthplace is also a partner to the Tucson's birthplace open space coalition.
Thank you. We look forward to your presentation. Next, I see Eleonoria.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eleonora Di Maria, and I'm with the Pima County Regional Flood Control District. I'm a hydrology, and I collaborate with Watershed. The Flood Control District collaborates with Watershed Management Group and a few projects that are going to be presented, that Carlo is going to present today.
Thanks so much. It's great to have the project partners online. Hannah, you're next.
There. I'm Hannah Oden, Planning Coordinator at PAG.
Thanks, Hannah. Joseph Kane.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joseph Kane. I'm a hydrologist for the city of Tucson and project manager for the heritage site downtown.
Thanks. And Kimberly.
Kimberly Baeza with Pima County Wastewater, and I'm the backup representative for the department on this committee.
Thank you. And Logan Phillips.
Hello, everybody. My name is Logan Phillips. I am an organizer with TBOSC, Tucson Birthplace Open Space Coalition, supporting Chuck's presentation today along with Angel.
Good to see you. Melanie, you're up next.
Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Alvarez, and I'm a planning coordinator with PAG.
And Melanie will be presenting later. And next we have Molly.
Hi, I'm Molly Lebo with the City of South Tucson, and I'm attending on behalf of our planning director, Josue Licea.
Thank you. Paula?
Hi, I'm Paula Boomer of the town of Morena, representing, I think I'm Morena's person on this.
I can't hear you very well. I can tell that you're speaking.
Normally you can hear me quite
But I know Paula is one of our members of both EPAC and WPS. Do you want to test your mic one more time?
Is that any better?
It's still very faint.
Okay, I'll work on it.
Okay. Next, Scott. Scott Bennett. Oh, did I already have? Yeah, I think I already called on him. We have just a few more under attendees. Are those who haven't been promoted to panelist, can they speak?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Chris Gold, please.
Hi, my name is Chris Gold. I'm with the town of Morena. I'm the environmental specialist for the town.
Good to have you. Next up is Mirella.
Hi, good afternoon, Mirella Hermatica. I'm a planner here with the Pima County Wastewater. And I believe I'm a backup member. I'm not sure if I have a membership for this panel.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Mirella is one of our essential designated management agency representatives on our 208 task force. Adelis?
Hi everyone, I'm Idalis Moyet with the town of Sahuarita, project manager, and I'm here on behalf of the Public Works Director.
Thank you so much. And we have, I believe, a few more. Heidi?
Hi, my name is Heidi Kosis. I work at the Arizona State Land Department. I'm here on behalf of Elizabeth Logan. I'm not sure if she's a member or I was just told to attend.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. And let's see, Matthew.
Hi, I'm Matt Holcomb. I am the Stormwater Coordinator at ADOT.
Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, Marie Light.
Hi, I'm Marie Light. I'm a stormwater hydrologist with Pima County Department of Environmental Quality.
Thank you. Did anyone jump in who I did not call on yet? It's in alphabetical order, so I might not have seen you pop up. Okay, well, with that, let's get started. Agenda item number 2 is in-kind reporting. So I will just read to you what's on the screen. Basically, please tell me if you have spent any extra time on preparing for the meeting, and especially if you're on federal funds, because that affects our in-kind reporting. So regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply as used for our matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you're paid with federal dollars, please let me know. Time spent in this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of the meeting, the session report will automatically calculate the time spent in the meeting. Time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. So we appreciate your time. Thank you very much. It helps to fund what we do. Okay. Up next is our first presentation by our very own Hannah Oden. She's a planning coordinator at PAG, as she mentioned. She's also the staff lead for EPAC. So she's going to briefly review the process for 2025 for the annual top environmental issues list update.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so for this agenda item, I am just briefly going to discuss the EPAC top environmental issues list for 2025 and that process. So the issues list is something that's developed annually by EPAC and its subcommittees in coordination with PAG staff. So it's important because it reflects regional environmental priorities, and it's developed based on discussion, collaboration, and consensus among EPAC and subcommittee members. And it's really unique because it's developed by jurisdictional partners and interest groups in our region. So it offers a comprehensive picture of regional environmental issues and priorities. It also informs the area-wide water quality management, or the 208 plan, so those annual administrative updates, and also informs planning documents and encourages regional collaboration. Another important component of it is it helps form the basis for our meeting topics throughout the year, both for EPAC and subcommittees. So this slide shows just the topics that are included in the currently approved list, of the list for this year, 2024. So there are a few priority categories in here. So equity and environmental justice is one. So there really was a focus during the last update that was placed on equity and environmental justice as an overarching and cross-cutting issue that really impacts all areas of the issues list. The next category is healthy environment. So this includes issues such as clean air, clean water, solid waste reduction, stewardship and enhancement, and wildlife connectivity, which was a new addition when we went through the last update process. Regional resiliency is another category. So that includes resilient infrastructure, resilient economy, water reliability, and climate variability. So as I mentioned in the last slide, we really try and cover as many of these throughout the course of the year through presentations at EPAC and to subcommittees as well. All right, and I just want to briefly touch on the structure for the issues list. We went through the last update because based on committee feedback, we did restructure and reorganize it a little bit just for clarity and consistency throughout the document. So there really was an emphasis that was placed on regional collaboration as well as shared objectives. There's language added regarding advising on federally required PAG plans, and also an emphasis on actually using the list to track regional accomplishments, because we know there are a lot. And so each of the issues, categories, we went through and tried to make the organization consistent throughout the document, again, just for clarity and consistency. So the organization, you have your priority category, and then there's a description of the top issues under that. So the current status, why they're important, any other information about those issues, and then as well as strategies to address specific concerns. So that's just kind of a high-level primer just on how the issues list is organized. All right, and moving on to just the development process, how we're actually going to go about updating the currently approved list for this year to the list for 2025. So there was an EPAC meeting that was held at the beginning of this month. So after that meeting, the issues list was sent out for initial comments on October 4th to EPAC and its subcommittee members. So hopefully that came across your email. And we did ask for initial comments by October 18th. We did receive some, so currently as PAG staff, we're creating a preliminary draft that incorporates those comments and feedback, as well as what we heard at the EPAC meeting, to create a preliminary draft that will be sent to EPAC, WPS, and AQS members in early November. So we are almost at November, so we'll be getting that out here pretty soon. And then once it's sent out, we'll have a 2-week comment period for just any additional feedback or comments on that list. So as PAG staff, we do review to ensure consistency with PAG's federally mandated planning activities. Again, any feedback we receive from when the list is sent out next month, within that 2-week comment period, we'll incorporate all that feedback into a final draft that will be included in the meeting materials for the December EPAC meeting. So we do anticipate an action item at that meeting to finalize the issues list for 2025. And that will be a recommendation to the PAG Executive Director, and then typically the list is provided to Management Committee and or the PAG Regional Council as an informational item. So just as you're maybe thinking about changes to the list or any updates, and you can think about maybe any new priority issues that you think should be included, new next steps for specific regional collaboration for an issue, as well as any accomplishments made that you would like to highlight. So, and as PAG staff, we do update to reflect any changes to PAG plans, such as the 208 plan, as well as updates to any federal regulations. All right, and that wraps up just my brief update, but I'm happy to take any questions or if there's any initial thoughts on updates, we can maybe have that conversation, but I will turn it back over to Mead.
Thanks, Hannah. Appreciate you sharing that with this subcommittee. And we do have a couple minutes available for questions or comments. Just unmute to speak. Or if there's many of you speaking, we can start using your digital hands. Don't see any. We do, as staff, I wanted to suggest a couple of topics because we've had presenters offer to speak about them. And we use this list to, as Hannah said, to help us determine what presentations to bring you throughout the year. This is your opportunity to do that. So one was from Tucson Water, had offered to speak about a study they're doing of lead in pipes on private property. And Dan Quintanar was wanting some more regional coordination on that effort. So that could be a presentation soon, and we could connect that into the issues list. And another one that came to mind was the Oro Valley's Northwest Recharge and Recovery Delivery System. We haven't heard about that yet in our committee, only briefly, heard it mentioned throughout the basin study efforts, but we haven't received a full presentation lately. Does anyone else, does that stir any thoughts from anyone else?
Actually, I had a question about the presentation. I I was wondering what the process was for getting the community feedback. Like if you sent out a survey or was it email feedback or how did you reach out?
Sure, yeah, I can take that. So yeah, so for this effort, it is something that is developed by EPAC specifically in subcommittees. So we typically we present them at the meetings, then we reach out through email with a PDF of the document, and then members can provide feedback. So meet down if you had anything else to add.
No, that covers it. That they'll vote in December, so there's that meeting for discussion as well at EPAC.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, we'd love to hear from you. Just feel free to email Hannah, and I'd appreciate being CC'd on water topics. And you will see that email soon. Please let us know too if this issues list has been handy within your own work. It's nice to hear that from others. Thank you. All right, we have agenda item number 4 up next. Thank you, Hannah. The next presentation is about limited contamination findings in historic landfills, and Chuck Graff was formerly Associate Director and Principal Hydrologist at the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. During his career, he conducted many investigations on landfills, including one that put the Hacienda landfill west of Phoenix on the federal Superfund list, and it still is 37 years later. He is happy now to devote his time as a board member and docent at Mission Gardens, located next to the early Tana Autumn settlement from which Tucson gets its name. So EPAC and WPS have both expressed interest in this area of historic cultural importance and natural river heritage. So we are excited to hear his presentation about the environmental quality findings around it. And he also, as you may have heard in the intros, has some colleagues with him here today to aid discussion about opportunities. So I'll hand it over to you, Chuck. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if this, my screen will come up. What do I have to do here?
You're good. And then transition the slide.
My next slide. I don't see any slides here on the screen.
Issa, would he just need to hit the forward arrow?
There should be a little pop-up on your screen that should allow you to take over control.
Do I have to do share screen?
No, it should just pop up as slide control. There you go. You got it.
Okay, yeah, here we go. Good. Thank
Perfect.
You.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anyway, right. Thanks. Thanks for inviting me to talk about a mountain landfill. I'm going to be covering today the current environmental characteristics of the landfill. And my goal actually is to allay concerns about any environmental hazards that relate to the landfill, and instead see the opportunity to for converting the landfill to a community open space purpose. And at the bottom of the slide, it says I'm a board member at Mission Garden, which is actually a board member of Friends of Tucson's Birthplace, which is the nonprofit that operates Mission Garden, which is on Pima County property. So, okay, whoa, there we go. Okay, I'm getting the hang of it there, I think. Okay, so what I was going to talk about today was a little bit about the setting of the landfill, and then the key landfill characteristics, which are really two, which is a landfill gas generation, and then the situation with groundwater. And so I'll be talking about groundwater levels, historic and current, and groundwater quality. A few thoughts of mine on heritage recharge project considerations. And then the suitability of the landfill as sort of a community space and an example of what could be. So these are my main information sources that I consulted for putting this presentation together. In 2011, City of Tucson did a comprehensive landfill investigation that included a lot of landfills along the Santa Cruz River, including the landfills that I'll be talking about. In 2015, Hydrogeochem did a in-depth investigation of landfill gas and soil conditions. Then just recently, Tucson Water submitted an annual monitoring report with respect to their aquifer protection permit for the Heritage Recharge project. And then most recently, Hydrogeochem did a to whom it may concern level that clarified some points in their earlier
Did we lose Chuck?
Chuck, I think you
Okay,
muted
here
your
we
mic.
go. Okay, yes, so the last one was a Hydrogeochem to whom it may concern letter that clarified points in their 2015 study and in the current Villanueva master plan. I lost, when it came back, I lost the ability to move forward again. Can I just say next slide? Will that work?
You got it, no problem.
Okay. So these are the landfills we're going to talk about. I call them the downtown landfills because there's a whole string of old landfills that were both north and south of this. So they originated as clay excavation pits for brick making. It started in 1896 and went to 1963. And so then in the 50s and 60s, a lot of these pits ended up becoming city landfills. And so you can see the map here where Cushing Street and Congress Street is, the Santa Cruz River, Grande Avenue. You can see where Mission Garden is down in the lower left there, which is kind of a point of reference that you can use in some later slides here. But one of those landfills was the Nearmont landfill, and it's the smallest of the three. It was finally closed in 1967, and all the refuse has been removed there, and it's been reclaimed with clean fill. Congress just lost the screen again, and it's coming back. The Congress landfill operated in the 50s into the 60s, and theoretically all the refuse has been removed. I have some questions whether there isn't still some there, and it's been reclaimed with clean fill. The focus of our conversation today is the A Mountain landfill, which is the biggest landfill, and it operated between 1953, closed in 1962. There's been at least 3 episodes of clean fill tapping. And, these landfills have been studied for a long, long time. And the first environmental investigation was in 1983. And there's been long-term monitoring of both landfill gas and groundwater for since 2000, at least since 2000. Next slide, please. So there's a little bit of busy slide, but it shows the neighborhood of Tucson's birthplace. And to give you a bearing, there is Mission Garden there on the left. So Mission Garden is the original garden for the mission San Augustine, which you sort of see near the center top there. And this is Tucson's birthplace. This is where Father Kino rode on horseback in 1694 and found the Kahana settlement of Tucson. And of course, that name got morphed into Tucson and Tucson, and this is our Tucson's birthplace. The mission itself came about 80 years later after Father Kino, and it was in use in 1773. And Mission Garden was the walled garden for that mission, and the current version of Mission Garden sits on that same footprint as the Mission Garden for that original mission, San Augustine. And it sits on native soil. Unfortunately, if you can see the purple line there, it's a little hard to see. That's the limit of the A Mountain landfill, and it actually abuts and almost comes right up to the walls of Mission Garden and then extends east to the Santa Cruz River. You can also see that landfilling north of Mission Lane there in the old Mission complex, that kind of landfilling in the original clay excavation permit pits, destroyed about the eastern 3/4 of the Mission San Augustine complex. Also shown are the property lines in white, and the yellow there are easements from the Rio Nuevo Improvement District to Mission Garden. So the property ownership here is north of Mission Lane there is the city of Tucson, and that's part of the property, or most of the property you can see on the image here. The city of Tucson intends to turn over to the Kahana Nation. Mission Garden, as I mentioned, is on Pima County land. The A Mountain landfill is owned by the Rio Nuevo Improvement District. Next slide, please. So this just gives an idea. There's just still tons of archaeology in the area that hasn't been disturbed by the landfill, and 2 major 700-page archaeological reports have been completed in the 2000s about this. This particular drawing shows all the irrigation ditches that have been found, underneath current soil in Mission Garden and the Mission San Augustine site, including at the very left side, that big wide one. That is the largest known Hohokam irrigation canal south of the Gila River that passes right into the west wall of Mission Garden and goes out the north wall. It was 16 feet wide and 7 feet deep. It must have been bringing an enormous amount of water in for irrigation into the floodplain by the Hohokam and possibly reused even later by the Kahana Autumn. Next slide, please. So this is a geophysical survey that was done in 2002 to interpret landfill depth. And I wanted to point out 2 things. There's actually 2 pipelines that cross the landfill. The El Paso natural gas pipeline, which is now Kinder Morgan, it was constructed in 1934. And so it was constructed before the landfills, and there were probably clay irrigation pits there. We'll come back to that later. The other is a major 33-inch sewer interceptor of Pima County wastewater that brings sewage from the south part of town across the landfill. It was constructed in 1978, and it was constructed through the landfill, and then eventually goes up to the new treatment plant that we have north. Next slide. So that geophysical survey was used to construct this interpretation of landfill depth, and I'm continually losing this and then comes back here. But so the main points I wanted to make about this is that the deepest pits in the landfill, and you can see where Mission Garden is there, The deepest pits in the landfill are, it shows on the graph, they're 40 to 50 feet deep in the northeast corner of the landfill. And then the pits become shallower as they move to the west into towards Grande Avenue. Next slide, please. So with respect to landfill gas generation, and this comes mainly from that, or completely from that hydrogen report of 2015, there was many monitoring points put into the landfill, the sample landfill gas. 3 of them, those that are circled, are still being monitored on a yearly basis up in the top to measure migration of offsite methane gas at the top between the landfill and residences, and then near the bottom. And the hydrogeochem report of 2015 said that methane generation rates are relatively low, and that since 2000, there have been no detections of offsite migration of methane or other hazardous gases to those 3 offsite gas monitoring wells they have. And these methane generated by the anaerobic decay of decomposition of garbage, of organic garbage. And the same for carbon dioxide, which they detected in the landfill, but except that would be for aerobic decay. Next slide, please. So the hydrogeochem report of 2015 spent some paragraphs talking about carbon dioxide concentrations, and it was relatively pessimistic about the levels of carbon dioxide that they found in the landfill, and that would have caused stress to the soil. But as I say at the bottom, the vegetation didn't get the message. There's a fairly robust growth of vegetation on the landfill. Next slide, please. So moving to groundwater here now. Let's see how much time I have left. Okay. Moving to groundwater. Tucson Water maintains 5 monitoring wells to monitor groundwater relating to these landfills, and 4 of them are specific monitor wells that were constructed. The 5th LMO07A is a former production well. One of those monitor wells is actually on Mission Garden property, and as part of the Tucson Water's Heritage Recharge Project, the compliance well for their permit is located at WR 364A, kind of toward the south there. Tucson Water currently measures water levels weekly, and I said that Tucson Water, I don't know if you can read that at the bottom, but said that Tucson Water collects water quality samples now quarterly, which is not correct. Joe Kane at Tucson Water corrected me on that. Right now, they're collecting water samples for analysis monthly at their compliance well, and semi-annually at their other monitor well. Next slide, please. So this is what the groundwater flow map looks like. Groundwater flow flows northward, maybe northeastward. You can see the location of the landfill at the left there with the line of the Heritage Recharge Project. You can also see some major contamination sites to the northeast. The 2 at the furthest left and farthest right are dry cleaning contamination sites that are state Superfund sites. And then the one that says Passenger Depot there is an underground storage fuel contamination site. But the point being from this is that these sites are downgrading of groundwater flow, and some have said that, well, they can impact the A Mountain landfill area, but that's not correct. Next slide, please. This is a map of change in groundwater level from 2000 to 2002, and you can see the star for the Heritage Project, and then Mission Garden is right at the toe of the A Mountain just to the north. But you can see that over those years, there's been a lot of rise in groundwater level, and a lot of that was due to the south cessation of pumping, use of CAP water down there, the Santa Vera district, and recharge, dedicated recharge facilities. So you can see that the Mission Garden area is actually an area of groundwater rise over those 20 years. Next slide, please. This is a more recent map by Tucson Water here, but you can see that between Mission Garden and Mission Lane and Cushing Street, it's a greatly steepened groundwater gradient, groundwater moving from south to north here. It's currently been about a 70-foot increase in that. And so groundwater levels currently in this area under Mission Garden are around 30 to 35 feet, up from much lower, over maybe close to 100 feet a number of years ago. Next slide, please. So these are the two wells that we're going to quickly look at here. This is the well on Mission Garden property. You can see the early, going back to 2000, groundwater levels around 120 feet. And then since the start of the Heritage Recharge Project, which is that vertical green line, you can see groundwater levels rising. The Tucson Water has an alert level in their permit for this well, which is a non-compliance level. But you can see that the current groundwater levels as of 2 weeks ago, I think of 34.4 is above this level. Next slide, please. Now, this is their compliance well, and you can see kind of the same pattern. It started out at about 120 feet below land surface. And since the beginning of the Heritage Recharge Project, the water levels have risen to even above what Tucson Water shows on the graph as prohibition level, to about 40 feet above land surface. So these levels mean that the lower parts of the landfill are submerged, the deepest pits are submerged. Next slide, please. And this is a little bit busy, but it shows that compliance level going straight across, and it shows the depth of water, groundwater, as that blue line. And it also shows the pumpage, and it shows how City of Tucson started about 1,900 gallons per minute, and then going over to the right, the water levels really started rising, and they essentially have dropped that discharge rate to about 100 gallons per minute to preserve the riparian area right around the discharge point. And this could have been partly from the monsoons, but mostly from the park discharges that were further upstream that have since then ceased. Next slide. So what are the impacts on groundwater quality? And these are all the constituents that the Tucson Tucson Water samples, inorganics. The one box down in the lower right are the organics, which would be of most concern to us with respect to the landfill. Next slide, please. And we're certainly not going to look at these, but that box contains about 80 of the common organic constituents that are contaminants of concern. Next slide, please. So the result of all the years of groundwater monitoring, this is the most recent sampling. It's actually the only detections they had of any organic contaminant, and it's actually from the Mission Garden monitor well, and it shows a low level of perchloroethylene or PCE. That's about started out about 1/5 of the maximum contaminant level, and by about 2018 has dropped to 0. And then it shows a little bit of a rise of the degradation product that you would get from the anaerobic degradation of PERC, which is cis-1,2-dichloroethylene, of rising to a high of maybe 0.7 micrograms per liter. And the maximum contaminant level for that is 70. So the upshot is that there are no organic contaminants of concern that are emanating from the landfill that in the past and likely in the future we would see. Next slide, please. And a couple ponderings. These are my own thoughts. No one else on impacts to the Heritage Recharge Project, but I think the water quality data, in my view, says that the water quality might not be a limiting factor if Tucson Water were to request a higher allowable groundwater level for their recharge, because the lower levels of the landfill are currently submerged and they don't appear to pose a contamination threat. However, I talked about those utility lines going across, and the gas pipeline line is about 13 feet below land surface, and the sewer line is about 28 feet below land surface. So it may not be a good idea necessarily to bring the water levels to end up submerging those. And those are just purely my thoughts on that stuff. I haven't talked to anyone about this, but there could be other ground structures that would need to be considered too. Next slide, please. So we're nearing the end here. So earlier this year, Hydro-Duke wrote this to whom it may concern letter clarifying the nature of development on top of the landfill. And they very clearly stated in that letter that there doesn't appear to be any significant impact to groundwater based on monitoring, nor lateral off-site migration of methane from the Mountain landfill. And their biggest concerns with respect to building are there's still some some methane being generated within the soil, which if you do a constructed building could rise into the building and cause an explosion hazard. And the possibility if there's still decay in the landfill and you could have some subsidence which would create instabilities to building. Next slide, please. And they said the landfill could be successfully planted and used as an open park space. And they say if closed structures are built, it would be best to limit those to those thinner refuge areas and avoid the northeast part of the landfill. Next slide. Now, what could be, and I'm going to use the next slide. And I am going to use an example of a landfill in Chandler, the Paseo Vista Recreation Area, a former City of Chandler municipal landfill. This is the entrance to that landfill. Next slide. And it's twice the size, the area of the A Mountain landfill. It's 4 times the height. In fact, it's the highest point in the City of Chandler. And it's a significant methane generation. They actually have a methane extraction system in it. And yet they developed this into a recreation area, a very nice recreation area. The Friends of Tucson's Birthplace sponsored 2 trips to this, one in 2018 and one last year, to take a look at that. Next slide. So that last point was the highest point in the landfill. You can see the last slide. You can see a lot of open space on top of the landfill. They have the Ramada at the highest point right here. Next slide. They make a big use of gabions in the landfill. Next slide. And I just lost it now. I'm back again. We obviously seeded this in the springtime, but that shows how nice it looks then. Next slide. This is an aerial view. You can see this landfill is right in the middle of a kind of a suburban urban area. There's still agriculture in the area. You can see the open space, parking areas on top, that sort of thing. Next slide. They have a professional grade archery range at top, disc golf course. And not until I did this Google Earth photo did I see in the kind of the lower right there's actually a big glyph of a scorpion there that you can see from above. And I think the next slide is my last slide. So, considering the A Mountain landfill, what are potential compatible elements for an open space purpose? And you could put native trees and other vegetation, space for wildlife, walking and bicycle paths, picnic tables, ramadas, river overlook, children's activity areas, interpretive displays, and possibly even some appropriately designed closed structures. All these would be keeping with making it into for use as an open space purpose. And you could even consider some big glyphs on the surface that you could see from the mountain. So that's my presentation. I'm open for questions.
Thanks so much, Chuck. It's really great to hear all the ways this could impact people who work in air quality, water, landfills, river management. And we have just a few minutes, so I thought we could take a few comments or questions. And we emphasize if you have something to share about opportunities for collaboration, support, or ways to address any future additional concerns, those would be great to start with. And I do want to leave a little time, especially for the Tucson Birth Space Coalition members, to talk about any updates.
Yeah, I'll jump in here just real quick on that and say that, yeah, I didn't really talk about all the current what's going on with the landfill. I did mention that it was Rio Nuevo, and Logan has been on top of that, and maybe that's something he could talk about.
So yeah, I could give a brief update on that because I think it's relevant to maybe what questions folks might have. Rio Nuevo is in the process of updating its 10-year master plan that would run 2026 to 2035, 6. And they are still owners of this parcel. And the Barrio Sin Nombre, which is the neighborhood closest to the landfill, just to the north of Mission Garden, and the Menlo Park, which is just a little bit farther north than there. They have their neighborhood plan, which has been under development for many years now, and that's going to be approved by mayor and council in early 24, we anticipate, or excuse me, 2025. And recently, Rio Nuevo voted to bring their 10-year master plan in alignment with the use of space identified by the neighbors in the neighborhood plan. And that neighborhood plan does call for permanent open space at this site, including preserving the wildlife connectivity that exists between Sentinel Peak, A Mountain, Chukshan, and the recovering Santa Cruz River. So it's really hopeful news that Rio Nuevo has kind of officially given up on commercializing this space, which is really great news. And so if it's not to be built on, and it's not impacting groundwater nor neighbors, the question of dig and dump remediation that is performed elsewhere nearby doesn't seem to be nearly as necessary, especially given its high price tag. So that's what could go on, but I'll leave it there for now.
That's really great to hear, Logan. Thank you for adding that. And I think I saw Kimberly. Yeah, your hand is raised.
Yes, so I have a couple of questions for Chuck. it shows unusual restraint that they wouldn't have a dump in the what is now the Mission Garden. Do you know why they protected it back then? I was just curious. It just seemed like they would have just plowed through everything as they did through other parts of the area. So that's my first question, but I have more.
Okay, well, I'm not sure I can totally answer it. Here's my guess on it. That land has been private land forever. It was even in the turn of the century, it was owned by the Catholic Church. It was part of the the Mission Garden complex, and then that went into private hands. And so I would guess that that's probably the reason for that. And the excavation, clay excavation pits apparently went into public land hands to maybe City of Tucson at some time. But I have not explored the ownership history in depth.
Mm-hmm. And so the A Mountain landfill, the elevation of that is considerably higher than the surrounding land along the Santa Cruz River. Do you know by how much you mentioned like 3 rounds of a cap, right?
Yeah.
Was it just because they needed a place to dump dirt and so they just did it there, or was there a need for that? And yeah, start with that.
I think it's related to the first thing you said, a place to dump dirt. The first 2 times have been described to me. The last time happened while I was living in Tucson, starting in 2015 again. And that was the dredging of the channel, so that soil was put on the landfill. And I think that I don't think there was any real. People can correct me, but I don't think there was any real plan on it, any sort of grading plan. You can actually see the original landfill surface because that sewer pipeline I was talking about that crossed the landfill. There's manholes in the landfill, and those are at the level of the top of the original landfill. And you just move away from that, and all of a sudden you get a rise of maybe 2, 3, 4, 6 feet higher than that old landfill surface.
Well, in my other, it's more a comment, it's fantastic to see what they did in Chandler. It seems like a very well thought out plan, but hopefully some elements of that get considered for a future park there. But as a regular user of this space, I would probably want to advocate for a lighter touch because it's already a rather lovely area. And I think that we often go a little overboard, like over landscaping and stuff like that. And I hope that, that sensibility is brought to future conversations about what it may look like in the future. I don't think it needs too many embellishments.
And I agree with you there. I mean, it's really kind of a de facto open space and wildlife preserved in an area. But, I think you can change it also from kind of a really negative space, I guess you could say, in terms of sort of public perception, into a positive space that people will want to come to, and it'll be a part of a bigger area of that would be indicative of Tucson's birthplace.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Kimberly, for your insightful thoughts as always. We're running just a little behind, and I don't see any other hands raised, so I wanted to thank Chuck as well as Logan for speaking as well. And we look forward to actually working with you a little more because some of these will relate to another presentation we have at the end on our water quality plan. So thank you very much.
Really quick, I'd be amiss if I didn't plug. We do Tucson Birthplace Open Space.
He froze for me. I don't know if that's generally the experience.
Angel, you might, if you can hear us, maybe turn off your camera and that sometimes helps with any internet challenges. Darn, I know he's involved in the Open Space Coalition.
I could jump in and anticipate, read my my good friend's thoughts here. We just wanted to probably invite folks out to the land itself. Tucson Birthplace Open Space Coalition finds that a lot of times these conversations are being had in Zoom rooms or under fluorescent lights. And it really is something else to, as Kimberly alluded to, see the life that has come back. The land indeed is healing itself, as neighbors talk about. So on the 29th, Tuesday at 5 p.m. Until it gets dark, we're meeting in the Mission Garden parking lot for a walk and talk where we just get to know each other and get to know the land. And so again, that's Tuesday at 5 p.m. Walk and talk, and you all are definitely invited.
And if I can just add one small thing that takes us another couple seconds later, I am more than happy to give a tour to Peg, where we would tour the landfill, the historical and archaeological, and all the different kind of senses of Mission Garden, as well as if people are interested in doing another trip up to see the Chandler landfill to sort of see the types of issues that they dealt with. I would be happy to lead a trip up there too.
Thank you both. I think we should share those opportunities with our committees as well as the Environmental Planning Committee to see if that could come to be as a field trip for maybe both of our committees. Super. Okay, thanks again, everyone. And I'm sorry that Angel got cut off. We can send out follow-up information with that invitation. So next up, we have the Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative's Drought Response Planning for the Environment. Leading this presentation is Kat Shipek. He is a Senior Program Director at Watershed Management Group. Many of you may hear as WMG, and he is a co-lead also of the Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative, and I am his co-partner in that. Kat will be presenting about a new effort to increase collaborative drought response planning or to support the environment. And he has City of Tucson and Pima County colleagues here with him who are part of the grant project. And this issue, I would like to let you know one reason we brought it here to all of you today is that it has been highlighted on PAG Regional Council resolutions, our PAG Riparian Health Assessment reports, our Drought Response Plan Comparison Report, and EPAC Top Issues List. So we are very glad to be partners on this project as well. And Katlo, you can take it away.
Great. Thank you, Mead. And yes, Eleonora and Asia are both on the call, so we did not plan this too much in advance, so please jump in if you have something more you want to add. And just a quick question, Mead, how much time is allotted for this?
You have 20 minutes, and we usually leave 10 for discussion. So you can mix that up however you like.
Okay, great, thank you. And the slides are not advancing.
And it did.
Oh, there we go. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect.
Do I just need to let you know, or I have now control?
No, you have had control. That's all
Okay.
you know. Mhm.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
So the Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative has received 2 grants to move forward local drought response coordination and planning for the next few years. So we're really excited to embark on this. And now, as you met Maria, I think Maria is getting connected on her own laptop now. Will be the SQUAT coordinator and watershed planning lead to help move this forward. So many of you will start to see Maria quite more often. So really excited about that. So just to give you all a little bit of quick background refresher, perhaps on the Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative, the mission of the collaborative is to restore the hydrological and ecological function of the watershed, largely by fostering cooperation and enabling watershed leaders to make well-informed management policy decisions. Many different initiatives being moving forward through the collaborative by collaborative partner leads. So the collaborative is a participation is voluntary. And so a lot of the initiatives are brought by the local or the different partners to help move those forward. So we're really thankful to all of the partners that engage and participate in the collaborative. These partners range from San Javier District of the Tohono Nation to different state and federal agencies, municipal and county departments, NGOs like myself through representing Watershed Management Group, as well as some private and U of A interests as well. So thinking about local drought response planning, we are framing it as two larger, bigger questions. First is, how can our city and county drought plans shift to be responsive to local drought and groundwater levels? And I'll just pause there in that we started with framing this around the city of Tucson and Pima County. But with the second grant being received, we are looking at expanding that to our many other different jurisdictions within our watershed. So thank you so much to the committee members for the time to be able to present this and engage early on this planning process. The second question we have is, how can drought response be best coordinated across jurisdictions and with the public? So I just want to, if anybody was around in 2020, it was a really hard year. The mountain was on fire. We had pandemic lockdowns, but we also had the hottest, driest year on record. And so thinking about that is how, if 2020 were to happen again, or something maybe even more severe, how could we as a community better respond to those types of conditions and be more responsive, perhaps even proactive to those conditions? So where are we currently? So currently, the city of Tucson has a drought response plan as mandated by ADWR as being within an active management area. And the city's plan is largely tied to Lake Mead levels. So it's focused on Colorado River drought contingency planning tiers. So when 2020 happened, Tucson water wasn't being affected because Lake Mead at that time wasn't being affected. So this is what indicates, based on Lake Mead levels, if Tucson water is at a tier 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Currently, I believe, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, we're at a tier 2 level. Pima County also has a drought response plan, and it's largely based on the recommendation from the county administrator and information from the local drought impact group. So 2020 happened, everybody started looking at each other and we're like, well, Colorado River water's fine. Yeah, we are very low rainfall, our streams are hurting, maybe the shallow groundwater levels are hurting, but largely we're okay. And so that's where the county had very little response coordinated among all the different jurisdictions and water providers. So currently, and maybe Eleonora can correct me if I'm wrong, is the county is at a stage 1 drought response. And I'll just pause there if Asia or Eleonora want to add anything to the city or the county's plan.
No, the only thing I would like to add is that the plan for the county is managed by the health department. So I'm not sure why, but that's how it works. And because we are not, the county is not the water provider, the only thing we could potentially do is ask people not to wash cars and do things like that, not to wash your car or not to waste water, but it's very hard to enforce. It will take a lot of resources, June 4, something like that. So that's all I have for now.
No, thank you for sharing. And that is very interesting. It's led by the health department. Asia, did you want to add anything to Tucson Water's plan?
I would say, just as Eleonora did, I think that's a pretty important thing to point out. Tucson Water is the water provider and is looking, the drought plan that Tucson Water put together is very much from the perspective of the water provider being able to deliver water to customers, and why it's so tied to that source water resources that we're looking at. And I have a lot more thoughts. Just generally, right, on the drought plan, but I think that's probably the most important thing that got touched on already. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I think, I apologize for the other jurisdictions on the calls. Largely, we are very Tucson centric. And so most of us are used to seeing this graph of where Tucson went from largely groundwater to now largely reliant on Central Arizona Project water, CAP, Colorado River water. And so thinking about, as we move forward, as we think about local drought response, from a large part, the city of Tucson is less reliant on local groundwater, and so is largely, as Asia mentioned, is largely focused on being able to supply water that's supplied by the Colorado River. However, I also want to note, we have some other resources here on this the graph. It's not just groundwater, not just Central Arizona Project water, but now we're also looking at reclaimed water, and there's a growing rain and stormwater portfolio. So thinking about this as a one water portfolio is we have all of these different resources that are impacted differently with different timescales, different geographical scales when we have drought, and even thinking about how does that influence community and larger watershed health, including our mountain forests. And I mean, this map points that there's some hope with the return and the recovery of groundwater levels, as we saw from Chuck Graff's presentation, huge recoveries and rebounds in our groundwater from not pumping in certain areas. However, if we look beyond the city of Tucson, we also see that other jurisdictions and even unincorporated areas are still hard hit from declines in groundwater levels that are also impacting local shallow groundwater and ecological function in those regions. So the goal of this planning process is, how do we aid, and we being members of the collaborative, so 40+ partners, aid in watershed-wide coordination to think about an integrated drought plan process that can have appropriate responses, not just from a water supply perspective to human communities, but water supply for ecological health and ecosystem function. So this would also include healthy aquifers and rivers. So thinking about water for both people and nature, and then thinking about it from varying geographical and diverse interests. So from shallow groundwater, upland areas, even mountain front springs, down to valley bottoms. So then thinking about what is drought? So we quickly realize there's all different forms of drought. There's meteorological drought, so essentially lack of rainfall or less rainfall. Hydrological drought, reduced stream flow, wetland, wildlife habitat. And then we have ecological drought, changes in nature due to changes in hydrology and meteorological drought that stresses those ecosystems. We can have even agricultural drought, socioeconomic drought. So how do we start moving forward and thinking about this? So I love this graphic because it gets us away from thinking about our water supply as just being from the Colorado River. Across our watershed, we have many areas, specifically shallow groundwater areas, that are supplied by this groundwater surface water connection, and then all of the influencing factors of from pumping to enhanced infiltration, to evapotranspiration and ecological corridors. even thinking about it from connected floodplains that could potentially enhance infiltration of stormwater as well as reduce flooding. So when we start thinking about drought, we think about all the connected systems. It also connects to a range of other community, both human and natural community issues that we're facing. So how do we start to define and measure drought? So fortunately, Arizona Department of Water Resources does this on a regular basis. They have a drought monitor. We can see drought is happening fairly frequently and can be fairly persistent across time. So then how do we start to think about this from a seasonal, annual, interannual perspective? 2. Okay, there we go. To short-term drought. So they produce on a monthly basis. What is the short-term drought? This is a map of the state of Arizona for August. We can see largely in August, we had a fairly good monsoon season early on. Now I should probably be updating this map as I believe the September map is updated and it's probably going to paint a little bit different picture. And we can start to look at, they define long-term drought as quarterly drought. So this is the April to June time period. So we can see Eastern Pima County, we're doing pretty well. Now, again, this is kind of a moving window, right? So as time moves, we may be coming into and moving out of drought, depending on that month to 3 month to 6 month precipitation window. So then we can start to look at longer term perspectives. And this is a nice graph from Cienega Creek, 1995 to 2022, part of a shallow groundwater area. So we have in the top line, the mega drought decline in wells. So this is well levels near Cienega Creek, 2 different wells. And then we can see that when we have those big stormwater recharge events, they can quickly recover these shallow groundwater areas. But when we're dealing with longer term drought, it is a drawdown on those systems. So then it puts our riparian systems at risk. It can put local water providers at risk, ultimately, in some areas. So we formed a drought technical advisory group, and we're actually meeting tomorrow. So you all get a first peek at how should we define drought? So I welcome feedback. Some of the technical advisors are here on the call, so kind of maybe some extra thinking before tomorrow's meeting. So a quick draft, and this is the very first draft, is an episodic deficit and water availability. So I think we may need to simplify the terminology. A lot of this is overly complex, but again, first drought. So water deficit for human and natural communities in our lower Santa Cruz watershed caused by less precipitation, reduced stream flow, and or decline in groundwater levels. So it could be localized. It could happen, for example, just in Sabino Creek or Cienega Creek or Sutherland shallow groundwater area up near Oro Valley, or it could extend across the entire watershed. So then also added to this definition is that we need to develop key indicators of drought, which would be listed as follows: to be determined and monitored to inform severity and drought and need for a response. So when we start thinking about indicators and monitoring, we're like, whoa, where do we start? And actually, there's so much already being done and regularly reported on. However, also with different geographies and different timescales. So we have pretty good indicators for all of the different types of drought, even for different areas. However, we're now dealing with a mix of monitoring entities from federal to state to local to NGO. To then, when are they being reported? Is this accessible on a daily, monthly, or annual, or multi-year process? And then how does that help us inform an appropriate and timely response? So I've started thinking about, similar to the Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative's Watershed Restoration Plan, we broke it from mountain uplands to shallow groundwater areas to community zones to our riparian corridors. So I'm kind of thinking that from a drought perspective, when we think about indicators, monitoring, and appropriate responses, we may want to divide up the watershed in similar topical interests areas. So this first one being mountain uplands, where our primary concerns are forest health, springs, wildlife, and maybe even mountain front recharge for downstream communities. So then largely our primary partners are going to be Forest Service and National Park Service. As we move downstream into our shallow groundwater systems that are influenced by those mountain uplands, we start to have different concerns: water providers, private wells, riparian forests, stream health, again, also wildlife corridors and connections to those mountain uplands. And we have these defined geographic primary areas from Cienega Creek to Soapberry Creek. And then as we move into the suburban urban corridors, we start to focus more on quality of life, community connections. And this is maybe where Eleonora, the Department of Health, Public Health may be of interest for thinking about heat stress and other community health issues. So then we also still have wildlife corridors. And then some of our primary interest areas may be our urban forest to deal with heat stress, air quality, stormwater, for example, maybe even thinking about the health of our green infrastructure systems that are reliant on stormwater in lower rainfall years. And then thinking about our river corridors. A lot of our river corridors are currently effluent dominant, but what about those immediate upland adjacent areas to those wildlife corridors that rely on the effluent that are fed by precipitation and stormwater? And then thinking about how are those cooling centers for our urban communities, as well as open space. So thankfully, we have 2 different grant awards that we're combining to really make this a robust planning effort. And so with that, our initial work plan is hosting semi-annual collaborative forums. These are open to all of you. We encourage you to get involved. Our next collaborative forum, which will focus on drought planning, is going to be December 5th. And then looking at how do we refine our current watershed health indicators to better hit on those drought indicators, and then start to brainstorm what are resilience recommendations to drought that we can then share with developed by all our partners and then shared across the community. An interesting study that came out of California during the last severe drought is that the more the media was engaged on a kind of lockstep effort by all of the different entities involved in dealing and addressing drought, the more the community responded. So just by better messaging across all of our jurisdictions, we could potentially have a better media response, which then leads to a better community response. Lastly is thinking about visual story map to track where are we at with drought, how are we responding to drought, and be a communication platform. I think I'm just wrapping up just to share different roles and responsibilities in this planning. It's largely through the collaborative, through coordination, forums. We are developing an Indigenous Advisory Committee to help guide and set priorities for this planning process. We are forming technical advisory group, largely with Pima County Flood Control District, Tucson Water, Pima Association of Governments. That's who we're initially starting with. Doesn't mean we have to stay that. If another jurisdiction is interested or a department is interested in being intimately involved in the details, we welcome that. And then myself and Lisa Shipek, our executive director, will be the 2 WMD staff helping to spearhead a lot of these planning efforts and do the behind the scenes work. So with that is the long-term outcome integrated drought response planning process. What we're also hoping is that this informs the update to City of Tucson Water's drought response plan. It helps inform the update to thinking about Pima County's drought response plan, and maybe for other jurisdictions, other private water utilities, even public water utilities, we can help develop and inform updates to everyone's drought response plans. So I leave you with these 2 questions. If there's time for responses, feedback, ways you want to get involved, definitely open the floor to that. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Catlo. We are running a bit behind, but I would love to make sure we leave time for any questions, maybe just a couple minutes. You could speak to Catlo's questions up here, or if you had other clarification you were interested in. Thanks for providing that information about how people can get involved through the forums. And maybe we could have you back at a certain point of progress in the future too. And we could highlight something on our issues list to bring attention to something such as building regional partners for a broader coalition, a broader collaborative. Any questions from the committee? Well, thanks again, Catlo. I think that there's a real opportunity there with the health department, with reaching out to private well owners, and we look forward to working together. Any last word?
Well, please reach out to myself or Mead if you want to get more involved in the collaborative. Oh, and I see Asia has a hand.
Yeah, I think I wanted to just echo what Mead was saying, right? That I think that Tucson Water is also looking forward to this process. And I do think that there are a lot of those, union intersection. It's really great that the collaborative can look, I think even, Tucson Water has a one water approach. But there's still, whether it's just the boundary of our infrastructure or the boundaries, right? There's a lot that can happen together with others and being able to communicate across the jurisdictions and I think with the public. So yeah, no, there's not much time. There is a lot to talk about. So I look forward to working on that.
Thank you, Asia.
I don't see any other hands raised. Unless somebody else sees one, because I think that mine might have a little delay. All right. Well, round of applause for Catlo. We really appreciate your time coming.
And thank you for the opportunity.
We have one more presentation for you all. And this is another in-house presentation. So next up, I hope you see the connection between all of these presentations. We have the PAG area-wide water quality management plan annual update for your feedback. For an example, of a connection, we update our 208 plan. We may be able to update our 208 plan based on some of the findings we heard from Chuck about historic landfills. And then we also tie it into the issues list, which Melanie will tell you a little bit more. Melanie Alvarez will be our presenter. She is a planning coordinator with PAG, and she'll provide an update summary, describe the purposes and process of our 208 plan so that you'll be able to use that same jargon. I'll let her take it away. We have a little bit shorter amount of time, but the next 10 minutes are dedicated to this. Thank you, Melanie.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction, Mead. So let's see, start out. We are the designated planning agency for area-wide water quality management planning within Pima County, excluding Tohono O'odham and Pascua Yaqui lands. And so under this designation, we established our own area-wide water quality management plan, which we refer to as our 208 plan for short. And under federal and state laws, discharge permits for municipal and industrial waste treatment facilities must be consistent with their Areas 208 plan before they can be issued. In this case, that would be by ADEQ. And so our 208 plan is comprised of multiple components. The first chapter is our adopted policies and procedures, and that outlines any of those policies and procedures for new or expanded public and private wastewater treatment facilities to become consistent with the 208 plan. And we also have our facility inventory and appendices, and the inventory provides modernized access to information about wastewater facilities within Pima County and allows for immediate updates so that it can stay current. This helps to ease our consistency review process. And then the appendices, additional appendices reflect past and current water quality conditions, management efforts, regulatory conditions. And our action plan provides recommendations that can be used to support our jurisdictions and partners' grant funding opportunities. So hopefully our member agencies and partners find that useful. It can help to demonstrate that regional support for funding those issues. So now a little bit of context for these particular updates. Here we're talking about our administrative updates, which apply to our facility inventory and the appendices only. This process was adopted in our 2020 comprehensive update to the plan, and it helps to keep that important regional data, regulatory info, and management efforts up to date. Our 208 plan requires notice to the PAG committee, so that's why we're here today. This is your opportunity to provide us with any updates that you have, any recommendations that you would like to see in the appendices and the inventory for our plan, as well as our action plan. And although the PAG Regional Council, ADEQ, and EPA do not need to approve these changes, we aim to provide a compilation of the administrative updates to these entities at least every 5 years. And so that's coming up pretty quick. And then, so moving on to some sort of types of updates that we put into our administrative updates since 2020. Have a list here of a variety ones. Appendix B of our 208 plan will provide more detail about these changes. And of course, we'll appreciate any review for, any of this, refining any content, and any review of any relevant sections. So if you have any interest in a particular area, please reach out to us. Let us know that you would like to provide review, and we'll definitely take those into consideration as we move forward with future updates. So a few examples are listed here. We tend to focus on top issues, which is informed by our top issues list, as well as any other recommendations that are brought forward by our members. We try to highlight any accomplishments in our region with groundwater remediation, any water quality updates or upgrades, facilities, and any of those management efforts in our region. And then, of course, we try to roll in any recommendations for funding priorities into our action plan. So this information comes from a variety of sources, and that includes all of you and EPAC when we put out calls for updates. We also get facility updates from our designated management agencies. Within Pima County, we get notices from ADEQ. We're always keeping up with the rulemakings that are in progress or have been approved, and then any stakeholder meetings. And we try to draw from any of the presentations that we get to our PAG committees, subcommittees, and working groups, as well as meetings of public advisory bodies within our region. And of course, we try to incorporate any newly completed studies that we are made aware of. And so the next steps here, we are wrapping up our internal review of our recent administrative updates, and we hope to get those posted online once they're approved. And once that happens, we'll provide our 5-year summary of administrative updates to ADQ and the EPA. And in addition, following up on the updates that Hannah gave on the issues list, we will try to align our 208 action plan with the issues list. And we're also working on some tools to help people to navigate the 208 plan and the 208 process by developing interactive story maps and a consistency review support tool. So hopefully once we get those wrapped up, we'll have be able to share those in more detail with this group. And in addition, we are coming up on our next comprehensive update to the 208 plan, which we hope to initiate next year. And of course, we welcome your review in advance of the 208 plan. Please let us know if you would like to provide any additional recommendations for the action plan, for our appendices. And in addition, with that comprehensive update, we will be doing some GIS updates. So especially for those who are those DMAs, anybody who manages a wastewater facility, we welcome any of the GIS data that you have available for your service areas and planning areas. So that will really ease those updates moving forward and ensure that we have the most up-to-date information available in our online inventory. And of course, we are welcome any input, feedback from any of our regional contacts. So please do reach out to us. We have our email address on this next slide. So there we have 208info@pagregion.com. So does anybody have any questions, comments, recommendations at this time?
Don't see any hands raised. You can always feel free to reach out to us at that email listed. And just to reiterate what Melanie said, that next year will be our big 5-year comprehensive update. So you'll be hearing more about that, and we hope that you utilize this plan. Some of the funding priorities we've named in the past have led to PAG being able to support applications for grants and led to funding of projects in our region, which is part of the intent of this 208 plan.
Yep, and just to add a little, just to clarify a little bit more with the comprehensive update, that would be to our adopted policies and procedures section. So that's the portion of our 208 plan that does require the more advanced approval process and needs to go through our regional council and ADQ and EPA.
That's the one that requires this committee's vote, so we'll have more of a role on it. Well, thank you, Melanie, and our wastewater entities will be hearing more first for those GIS updates, and also to let you know about these new resources we have in our portals online. And thank you for putting all this together, Melanie.
Thank you.
So it's 3:40, which is when we had planned to adjourn. And right before we adjourn, I just wanted to say some thank yous. I wanted to say congrats again to open space efforts near the landfill. Chuck, Logan, Maxie, Axie, Angel, thank you all for coming. Please reach out, any of you or members of the committee, if there are any steps that collaborators can help with to move things forward. Also, our gratitude to Catlow for winning the grant to move forward the drought monitoring and responsible environment, and the city and county for your partnership and leadership on that. And if Marie Light is still on, I wanted to especially thank you for all your service over the years as our past WPS chair. We really enjoyed your facilitation and speaker recommendations over time. Moving forward, our subcommittees are staff run, but it was so helpful to have your service, and we're going to send out a certificate of appreciation to you because we're very grateful.
Thank you, Mead. I really appreciate that. There are, of course, these wonderful projects that come forward, and there are still many yet to do.
So Marie will still be here help participating, but we wanted to send that note to you. All right, so that's all we have for today. We'll probably be meeting again. We meet at least annually, but we hope to send something out in the spring if there's interest for any additional meetings. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mead. Thanks to all the presenters.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Mead.
Thank you.
Thank you.